Order. Everybody stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Take the roll, please.
O'Connor.
Here.
Morissette.
Here.
Alms.
Here.
McCormick.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Hoggett.
Here.
Hall.
Here.
All right, we're going to start off with a public hearing on the proposed 2018 operating budget. It's going to be in consideration later this evening. Is there anyone here who would like to address the budget? Come forward. Name and address, please.
Edward Rankin. My address is 448 Red Brick Road, Hudson, Wisconsin. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Nice to see you, Catherine. My name is Ed Rankin, and I am a Hudson police officer, and I've spent my entire career here with the city of Hudson. I am currently in my 36th year with the department. As you can imagine, I've seen a lot over the course of my career. The changes in the job, how we operate, and the atmosphere in which we now have to function have changed greatly. And then there are the changes in our community. The growth in population and geography has been staggering. I'm here tonight to implore you to approve our department's budget, and I ask that you add the patrol sergeant and patrol officer positions. My time with the police department is coming to an end, but the men and the women that I've had the privilege to work with will always be my family, although most now are more like sons and daughters than brothers. I care about them and I want them to be safe. Here's some of the changes that I want you to be aware of. In 1991, the dog track opened and we added 4 patrol officers, going from 8 to 12 patrolmen. At that time, the population was 6,300. I believe our population now to be somewhere around 15,000 people in the city proper. Since 1991, we have added 2 patrol officers, bringing us to our current number of 14 patrol officers. I'll say that again. We have added 2 patrol officers in 26 years. Think of the growth of this city in the last 26 years. I've witnessed it firsthand. We had 4 hotels then. We have 8 now with plans for at least 2 more that I'm aware of soon. Each hotel brings hundreds and even thousands more visitors to our city year-round. We have another industrial park. We have more schools. You get it. I'm sure you've noticed the changes too. Unfortunately, we seldom have 14 patrol officers available. Between vacation, training, sick time, injuries, and officers leaving, we are always short, leaving less officers on the street working longer shifts. And that's a recipe for disaster. And the community is being shortchanged, folks. We have a great relationship with the city of Hudson, with the citizens of Hudson. Even though the media shows the negativity surrounding police officers across the country, I and my fellow officers have experienced the opposite from the people of Hudson. I have never been stopped and thanked by more people in my entire career. The citizens have been accustomed to our officers' quick response time and for this being a safe place to live. But with our staff level, we cannot provide what they deserve. We are being more reactive when we should be proactive. I work from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. with one other officer, and after a night of car break-ins, we go from call to call to call, citizens waiting to go to work until we get there. I apologize that it took us longer to respond, and I'm also sorry that we only had 2 officers working overnight that were not a deterrent for the vandals and the thieves. I checked our schedules this year from July until November, and there were 10 Friday, Saturday night combinations that we had 2 patrol officers out from 9 o'clock at night until 6 o'clock in the morning. 4 of those weekends, we also had no supervisor out. I would ask that you seriously consider that and ask yourself if you feel that is safe. If it was your son or your daughter working, would you sleep well at night? Because I honestly don't. Last Friday night, we had 3 patrol officers out. We had a patrol sergeant, and Lieutenant Willems actually put the uniform on and worked the night shift. I guess he was going to show the young pups how we did it in the good old days. Well, Lieutenant Willems did arrest a drunk driver. He took him to the hospital to have a blood draw, and the subject refused and he resisted. And it took all 5 officers to hold him down while the nurses drew blood. You should ask Lieutenant Willems how that would have gone down with just 2 officers working that night. The truth is that when there are 2 officers out and one arrests a drunk driver, he's off the street from a minimum of 1 to 2 hours, leaving the other officer to handle domestics and bar fights alone. I was there 27 years ago, folks, and I still remember that awful feeling of not having your backup. Addressing the patrol sergeant position, we have 2 night sergeants, and when one is on his off days and the other one takes vacation or is sick, there is no supervisor out overnight. And like any other normal person, those vacation days are often weekends when we are busiest and lowest staffed. Removing myself and the other day shift dinosaur, Tim Rieger, the average years of experience with our department is just under 4 years. 7 of our 14 patrol officers have been hired in the last 2 years. All of them are on the night shift. With the environment surrounding law enforcement, there's never been a greater need for supervision. You'll notice a number of our police officers are here tonight. This is a very tight-knit group, and it's the best group of cops I've ever worked with. So not only do they deserve your support, folks, but they've earned it. So I'm asking you tonight, please keep my family safe, folks, and give us what we need.
Thanks, Ed. Anyone else? Anyone else here to comment on the budget? Any other comments on the budget? Any other comments on the budget? Hearing none, we'll close this portion of the agenda. Go to citizen comments. Anybody have anything to say tonight? Nope. No citizen comments? Citizen comments? Citizen comments. Hearing none, we'll close that portion of the agenda. Discussion and possible action on ordinance 15-17, 2018 appropriation ordinance.
Questions? I mean, you've had the documentation. No, Randy contacted me today about some questions.
Yeah, Devin, a clarification. So on the mill rate, if we were to take out the $85,000 for our squad cars and replace that with the leftover capital?
Let me explain. In just looking at ways potential that we could bring the mill rate down a little bit, Brenda and I talked, and there is some unexpended capital project money going back several years from like equipment that came in less than whatever. And so one possibility that would stay in the budget, I don't want the police officers to think we're taking it out of the budget, it would just have a different funding source. Instead of coming from the tax dollars, we would, for a 1 year thing, take $85,000 out of that unexpended capital projects. And so it'd be a transfer in. So essentially that would lower the mill rate to about 531.
So for clarification,
Right.
it's going to go from, as is, it was 536,
Right.
which is a 6.69 increase.
Right.
We drop it 5 cents, it goes to 531.14 per thousand, right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So that was just something that, we were trying to think of possible ways without, you guys have to make the decisions on what's in and out of the budget, but just a possible way to impact the budget without, and lower the mill rate. So that's one option that's out there.
So I guess I would support doing that, to knock down the mill rate, to a more palatable thing. The other things, I think you kind of more or less answered the questions that I had, in particular the info technology, 27,000K.
Right.
Clarify that.
Well, there's a number of items in your packet here. Mike has laid out, Mike and Brian have laid out the various items. Brian is here. Have laid out, should be in section 9 or 11. Should be in there where he laid out the different items that they'll need to because of the additional computers we have and the additional software needs and with the new building out with the water utility, which some of that will go to the water utility. But so he laid that out there. If there's specific questions for Brian, he is here.
Well, the bulk of that increase is what? The 27,000. I don't remember what I put.
I'll let Brian address that. I have the sheet here, Brian, if you need it. Oh, Brenda's got it, okay.
And a lot of it is under maintenance agreements and leases that have.
Yep.
Hi. Yeah, so one of the biggest costs is our website redesign that we'd like to do. Our current website's 5 years old. There's better mobile viewing technology. It's more mobile friendly. The back end for city employees to update and create web pages is a lot easier and smoother to manage. Our email costs have gone up this year, and it's expected to go up more next year. So that's why there's that $3,000 increase there.
Where are you putting that, the internet upgrade or the website upgrade, under the maintenance and leases? Or that's a $17,000 increase? Is that something we did with the new equipment, new software we bought?
So the website increase looks like it's, the redesign and the upgrade will be about 11,500.
Correct.
I can see on here.
Yeah, and then our remote management software has gone up. The firewall and security appliances that we've purchased, the maintenance agreements for the support on those has increased as well.
And then the rest is probably the increase in salary?
In that department, yes, so that would be the market adjustments. And
Yeah, and just so you know that that 9250, that's a one-time, so that's just for next year. That won't stay in there the following year
for the website redesign.
for the website redesign.
And I did mention to Randy that about 12,000 of what you see here is allocated back to the water and sewer.
Correct.
So based on the number of email addresses that they have, and
The next big one, thanks, Brian. The next big increase I found was clerk treasurer at 20,004. And is that due to the elections, not even including the new ones that are coming up?
nope, the elections are separate. Hold on a second here. The bulk of the clerk treasurer is just salary adjustments,
Okay.
which we discussed previously, so.
And then the other big one, I guess, besides community development, was the park maintenance. And there's a contractual agreements, and that goes, only 12.5 is for the goats, correct?
Well, correct, there's a buckthorn problem at Prospect, I believe is the main area. And then also there'll be so that's like 12,500, and then there's an increase for the dog park. Now, we're hoping that the dog park has indicated that there'll be revenue coming in that they'll help assist with those costs. We didn't budget for that because at this point, it's the first year, we don't know what that number will be. But, so the bulk of so yes, Randy, if you look at this sheet that I had sent out earlier with the breakdown with personnel and operations, yeah. So the bulk of the operations increase in parks is because of those two items.
And then community development is 82,000?
That is for the planner position.
Okay.
But remember, on the revenue side, there's money coming in because I believe at the next meeting, correct, Mike, the people be coming with a proposal for the fees for 2018. So we figured out the net of that position is about 43, but the offset shows up on the revenue side.
Okay. And the only weird question was, why are we budgeting $4,000 for electricity at Ward Avenue when we're not even using it? That's what I saw.
Right. We need to budget something for it, and we're never quite sure at what point someone's going to be in there. I mean, we do heat the buildings. I mean, not full heat or whatever because we have equipment and stuff in there, but it's in there because it's still something of an unknown, and we just want to make sure that if it starts being used for something, that we've got some money set aside.
Quite a big increase over the previous years.
It's the same. It's 10,000 last year. It was 10,000 this year for the total for Ward Avenue. It's the same amount both years.
Well, I question that, but that's fine.
No,
Because you got 1,800, and then it jumps. You budgeting 1,000 for water, sewer, and then electricity was 4,000, and as of September was
well, compared to last year's budget, it's the same as last year's budget.
Okay.
Now, yes, it's over what we actually expended because it hasn't been used. But again, we put money in there just in case. So the total budget for the building is 11,100,
Okay.
which is the same as it was last year.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, Devin, bottom line, it's 5.31 with the sergeant and the officer.
With the sergeant and the officer and taking the 85,000 from
Okay,
the capital.
all right.
I'll move we suspend the rules.
Second. Motion and second to suspend the rules. Roll call?
Morissette.
Yes.
Alms.
Yes.
McCormick.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Haggett. Paul.
Yes.
Okay, rules are suspended.
I move we adopt the resolution and our ordinance 15-17, 2018 appropriation ordinance, but I also want to make sure we take out that 85,000.
Right. Just in anticipation of all the possible mechanizations, I do have an updated ordinance, just so you are seeing what you're approving.
Any other recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, this is if
Randy?
everything the same except taking the 85,000. So what you'll see is the general property taxes would be lower than what you originally presented, and you'll see a transfer in under revenue, which would be the 85,000 coming in from the capital projects, unexpended. So this would be the ordinance that I just handed out, would be, if there are no other changes, what would be approved.
So after your questions, any other changes that you recommend?
No, not at this point, no.
All right, so, we've got a budget here that is significantly more, as far as our mill rate is concerned, significantly more than what we had in the past budget. In addition, we have a 5.25 self-imposed levy limit that we are going to blow right by without any discussion, apparently. And I presume that before we could even pass this, that we would need to do something.
Passing
to address
this
that.
would do that.
Go beyond the resolution. Okay. So I don't know if anybody was here when that resolution first passed. The
I was.
5.25.
Randy probably
I
was here.
was.
Oh, John, yeah.
Okay. So you guys obviously were part of that discussion. You know that with some of the increases that we've got this year, EMS is a huge increase, and we're going from 5.03 to 5.31 if we take the take the squad cars out. Over this past week, I've had discussions with Brenda and with Devin, and I was asking where can we make reductions, which is when we came up with the moving the squad cars out of the budget and using the capital excess to be able to fund those squad cars or squad car. But the other thing is, look, right now this is going to be a huge increase for our folks that are also going to be incurring an increase coming from the city. From the school district and likely from the county. I think we saw the number on that. Is it like 5% from the county? And so this will take us from a 7% increase down to about a 5% increase by taking the squad car out. I would like to try to get that down, and I know I'm going to be wading into some very difficult territory here. Officer Rankin made a very compelling case for the two added police officers, one being the patrolman and the other the sergeant. Right now, I would like you to consider, in order to bring this budget down even farther, to take out that sergeant position right now and consider that perhaps later in the year. And I say that for a couple reasons. Not because we don't need a sergeant necessarily. I'm not going to argue that at all. In fact, I have a long history of being very supportive of police officers, firefighters, and all of our public safety personnel, including EMS. But we do have a situation where we're going to have a brand new police chief coming in, and I think that we ought to give that chief a little leeway, a little latitude, to be able to determine what the staffing needs are going to be, and if in fact the new chief comes back with a recommendation that we do need that staff sergeant, then perhaps we could come back and fund that coming out of, let's say, our contingency fund, at least for the remainder of the current year, and then going forward budget for that later on. But that would be what I would like to see done. I'd like to see us get under the 5.25. If we were to do that, our levy would be down to 5.24. We would stay within the self-imposed limits that the council had imposed back in, 2011,
2012, somewhere in there.
And I think that we would be doing our taxpayers a service if we were to try to keep that levy as low as we could right now. So that would be my suggestion. I would hope that somebody here would take that up.
I personally don't agree for the simple reason that they asked for 3 officers, and we pretty much said we were only going to even consider 2. And going back to 1, to me, I appreciate the fact that we're getting a new chief and everything, but they're already shorthanded and really need another supervisor out there, and I believe the sergeant creates that. So to me, at this point, I'd rather find money somewhere else to try to whittle away here. And I, as being here as part of the 5.25 self-imposed limit, that was simply a measure that we never factored in the monies we needed for EMS, really, and we're still wrestling with that issue. And going past that was certainly something we didn't want to do. However, I don't foresee it being something we're going to do long term. All that being said, we were going to have to roll up our sleeves next year in 18 and not just do an automatic 1% increase for all the departments and things like that. Maybe it's time to stop doing that for a little while in terms of, we've been automatically increasing budgets by 1% for a while now. Yeah, we have.
Well,
usually you say...
I've been telling him 0, and then you guys make decisions on...
Well, from where I'm sitting, it always seems like we're getting a 1% in there. So, and that's kind of how we tackle it at the committee level. But I personally don't believe that the police department is where I feel we should sacrifice in terms of monkeying with the levy.
Devin or Brenda, what is the impact if it's 5.31 plus the other increases from the other government agencies on the typical house?
Brenda's got that.
On a with the no sergeant, no squads, or
just with the sergeant without
the sergeant without the cars.
Okay, that 200,000 valued house would be paying approximately $187 more next year.
Is that with all of the different increases from the school district and everybody else?
Yep, and taking into effect the state school credit increase, because that went up for next year.
Well, we all knew we were going to start walking down this road last summer when we took a vote, and it's going to come in 3 years when there is no more capacity. We all knew that, and I think that if we're going to have to spend the money, I'd rather spend the taxpayers' money on law enforcement rather than get to a point in 3 years where we don't have the money to pay for that. And I appreciate your comments about the not going above the 5.25, but I don't see an alternative. As others have commented, Officer Rankin made a very compelling argument why both a patrol sergeant and a patrol officer are needed, so I'm going to support it. I don't like to go above the 5.25, but I don't see an alternative because there's nothing else to cut this year that I can see.
I mean, the only other thing, and this would be a judgment call on your part, and it wouldn't get you to 5 1/4, would be looking at the contingency. Generally, we haven't spent all of that for several years, but that's up to you. I mean, that would be a policy decision.
So using contingency?
No, by lowering the contingency, you could, depending on how much you lowered it, from 60,000 to some number less than that. You were just saying other areas to cut that, and that's the decision. You do have, if there was something major that came up, undesignated funds from prior years. So I'm not saying that's what you should do, but I'm just looking through to figure out where there would be other potential.
Personnel or operations, the same things, but you could cut out the goats, $12,000 there. I mean, if you wanted to get nuts and bolts of it, those are the things we would have to push off and wait. I mean, if I added up almost $500,000, but obviously some of those are included in the increases we put in departments.
Right.
But there is money to be cut if you wanted to do that.
Well, if we cut the goats, it would probably end up costing us more because buckthorn is just going to keep on proliferating.
Well, I think that, it seems like these issues always do get pushed down the road, and I had hoped that we could roll up our sleeves and get this done this year, knowing, as Tom pointed out, what we were looking at, that we know doggone well that with the increases that we have that were voted on essentially earlier this year, we will be using up our entire levy cushion in the next 2 years. And, we're going from 2.03, 5.03 to 5.31 right now. Obviously, there is some reduction there. It was, I think, at 5.36. I think that the levy limit is 5.6. So we're eating up almost all of that right now. I had asked earlier this year that each of the department heads roll up their sleeves and bring to us a budget that was what I would think reasonable, that would take into account what was going to happen with our levy limits. I don't know that happened, but again, I don't want to be pushing this off down the road and saying we can roll up our sleeves next year when we should have been doing it this year. So we've got a big increase. I don't want to say it's unprecedented, but it is, from what I understand, in the most recent history, it's the second largest increase that we're going to have for our citizens, and I really, really think we need to try to rein this in. Again, I respect everybody's thoughts on police officers, and like I said, I'm big on law enforcement, and I think that's one of the best things that we have going for us in this town. And I'm not saying to take it out of the budget completely, but I'm saying at least take it out for the next few months and let the next chief come in, make his or her recommendation, and we can come back and do something creative with the budget, probably with the contingency fund for the remainder of the year, if, again, we want to do that. But that would save us some money. It would get us under the 5.25. Let the taxpayers of this city know that we're serious about their money and how we spend it. And, but I guess that's up to you guys, what you want to do.
So Devin, what about the 60?
Well, if you wanted to make an adjustment to the contingency fund, essentially every $16,000 you cut out of the budget or add to the budget is a penny on the mill rate. So if you were to drop the contingency by, let's just say 32,000, so the number works out, your mill rate would go down 2 cents a thousand.
But to get to 5.25,
you would need, well, to get to 5.25, you need 96,000 somewhere if you want to get down to the 5.25.
How much has our undesignated fund changed in the last year?
Brenda's got that.
We increased it approximately 300,000 last year, and we're thinking that we will increase it the same amount, a little bit less this year, because we're moving some room tax funds out. And so we think we'll be right around 52% undesignated.
And what's our target?
Well, our policy states between 12 and 15%, but that hasn't been updated for a couple of years. And so when Moody's looks at that,
isn't it 25 to 27.5?
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
And so when Moody's looks at that, they don't want us to use that undesignated balance for operations. So we can use it for one-time capital, which we've done when we purchased the library building.
Ward Avenue.
Yep, the Ward Avenue building.
Tower Road project also.
And the Tower Road project. And so the council has done a great job of using that undesignated for capital-type projects, not operating.
Okay.
We have to be careful about what we do with that fund. Also keep in mind that we have some bonding authorities coming up here pretty soon, some questions that are going to add to the debt significantly if the fire station comes to mind right away. if we go down that road. I'm sure we will. So we want to make sure that we maintain our bond rating as we borrow that money.
So you could lower the contingency to a smaller amount with the understanding if something major came up,
You use the undesignated.
an emergency type situation, then Moody's would, and just for clarification, Moody's is our bonding agent, so when we go out to borrow money, they're the ones that determine our bond rating, and the better bond rating we get, the lower interest, just as an
It is-
explanation to the public, so.
It is never good practice to supplement your operational budget with your reserves. You're
But
asking
what
for
I'm
fair.
saying, though, is with the contingency, I don't think in the last 3-4 years we've gone truly taking money out of contingency over 20 to 25,000, I don't think.
Correct, no.
So if you wanted to lower that again, just to get it down a little bit further, then if a true emergency came up, then, you could make a motion then to,
That's just trying to avoid decisions.
no, that's true. Just offering,
Well, I think,
No, I appreciate that,
to
Devin.
me, part of the challenge, and I know in Public Works that I'm sure, and the goat's a perfect example, but waiting till so much later in the year, you really don't really get a chance to get a flavor for hacking away at the budget and doing more budget review. I guess I personally feel like if we started earlier in the year, especially knowing what we're faced with, that we probably can get a little bit better handle on money and where it goes and how it's spent. I'll just say again, I'm not in favor of eliminating that second officer. I would like to do that. If we grab a little contingency money and then in 18 really start to ratchet, knowing that we're hitting the, going back to our self-imposed limit, fine. But I just think that this is an adjustment we really have to make.
just for clarification, just operations, now taking out the EMS increase, which we know about, and then there's a debt service thing that, nobody's asked the question, the transfer of debt service, essentially, we collect the money from our partners for the fire department, and then as part of our revenue, but the debt that they're helping us pay off is out of the debt service fund. So that's what that 32,000, essentially, we're just moving it to a different fund to pay the debt. But take those two things away, there was only a $17,000 increase in operations across all the departments. So the departments really didn't come in with a lot of extra stuff in operations this year.
So it's capital.
There's capital, and personnel obviously is, and personnel is always going to be your big expense regardless, because that's where 60 to 70% of your expenses are.
Johnny, there was a time where we did not give the 2% increases across the board.
I remember that, yeah.
And then if it comes down to that, that was part of nationwide. No one got raises. If we get in that situation again, why I support what we have in front of us is because we have got to keep up with the growth of the community, and of course, rolling up our sleeves and chopping away. But every time I go through this exercise, I bring up certain things, and nothing wants to get cut. Nothing gets cut. Those are the decisions and tough decisions you make. Do we need goats? Can it wait for a year? Do we need to update the website? Can it wait for a year or two? It's functional. It's just common sense. But I won't support, I'll always support the police department and giving them their needs for the same reasons that were quoted already.
So the goats and the website are out.
It's only saving us a
Hey,
penny.
I'm listening.
$20,000 only saving us a penny.
Right.
Penny and a
Well,
two.
the goals are 15 and the website's 9, 11, so 26, so yeah, penny and a half, penny and 3/4.
Let's face it, the goats save a lot of pesticides and chemicals that are not good for us.
I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm not saying I don't support it.
Right.
But we're looking at the overall picture, what's a need and what's a want.
So Randy, you want to put the goats on the chopping block?
I'm just putting it out there.
It's levity. I like the humor.
It's a biblical.
Are there any other big items that, we're down to pennies now?
Right, obviously there's personnel items, and I mean, I think you've addressed, like I said, and me throwing out the contingency was just trying to
Yeah.
give you another place you could look.
Well, I could support a reduction in the contingency fund if somebody else would supporting that too.
What would be a recommended reduction in the contingency fund?
Well, that's kind of your, I mean,
What's
I don't
the-
think we've gone, again, I think we stayed under, true contingency items probably under 20,000 the last few years.
And we
Correct,
budgeted.
Brenda? Would that be a,
Yes, I think so. And I think we'd feel very comfortable at 30,000 or 25,000 with the contingency.
so you could make it 30? If you went 32, that would be, make it 20, I mean, just
Make it 28 and
28,
save
and then
2
you take
cents.
2 more cents off.
Okay.
And then again, with the understanding that if there was a major, something that we needed the funds for, and usually Moody's would not look negatively on that because it was an emergency, so.
Then we have money.
I think Randy said, it's not good to delay or take it out of something like that in order to delay a decision. I mean, we're here charged with making a decision, not avoiding it. And we're avoiding it by taking money out of the contingency. So I think we either swallow it or find some other way to cut it.
I'm actually okay with the contingency because we still have the undesignated fund balance covering, because they're already saying we're already doubling our budget for contingency effectively.
Well, we've had 60,000, we've had up in prior years, it's been up to 100,000, and over the years, we've just reduced it. Last year, the year before, there was that expenditure we gave, additional funds we gave to the library. And it was last year, the year before, we took 40 out of it, and that's where it went to the 60,000 number, and we've left it at that.
Didn't we take money out this year for the EMS?
That would have, when you budgeted last year at the time we weren't sure where we were going to be in July, we budgeted so much, and the rest of it just came out of the undesignated. And that was what was budgeted, the way we budgeted it last
did
year.
take it.
So it isn't really out of contingencies, out of the undesignated.
Okay.
Well, I think the goats is an easy target because the buckthorn problem is not going to get, it's bad already, and we happen to find a solution that we could start doing something with it. So another year is not going to make or break that situation. So that, to me, that's an easy one.
You're suggesting take it out?
Yes, take that out of the budget.
What about cutting it in half so that we at least have a trial run of the goats?
Just 12,500 is what the number is. That was designated in the budget for.
So that's less than a penny.
Right.
Right.
What was the other thing, the website?
Website development,
11,000.
you got basically $20,000, right, with the two website development and the goats.
I believe that. Brian, is that total would then be about 11,000 if we delayed it for a year? It was 2,300 for the upgrade and 9,250 for the, so 11,500.
So that gives you a penny and a half. It still shows our ugly mugs on it, so.
So all the goats, some of the goats.
How much is it for all the goats, 12.5?
12,500,
12.5.
which would be 24,000.
All the goats. That's 20 grand
24, yep.
plus 28 from the contingency.
What?
Well, I don't know that.
You're not in favor?
In addition to
thinking
the
out loud?
contingency.
I am. That's 48 grand right there. If you had 28 from the, or 40, 50.
32 is what he was proposing.
I'm sorry, that's 50,000.
Goats on the website, so we know where we're at.
So 12.5
Whether we have
plus
any agreement on it.
75.
I'm not interested in the contingency, touching that contingency money for operations. It just doesn't make sense.
Okay.
And like Tom said, kicking it down the road like we typically do is not going to help, because you're going to have to replace it, rebudget it, and rebudget it.
And we've been whittling that down over time, right?
Yes, it is less than it was in prior years. So if you take those two items, you're at 5.299. Sounds like a sales price on a house or a car.
Sounds like a winner.
Well, 5.30 and 5.29 is, in psychological terms, it's the just noticeable
Well,
difference of making it comfortable or
It's
not.
actually just one.
It's essentially, it's 530, but
Oh, come on.
529.9 is what, or 5.299.
It's not the gas station.
Hidden fees.
So that's taking out all goats and the website update, is that
Yep,
correct?
let me double check that, so I'm the right number here.
Still need, 75?
If you were to get down to the 5.25, yes.
What else is on your $500,000 list? That's a lot of money.
Well, some of them are fixed in we addressed most of the park maintenance, but that was 52,000. I don't know what the other,
The park mate,
on the contractual park maintenance.
there was a 15,200 increase in parks operations. And the bulk of that was from the goats and for the buckthorn and the increase for the dog park.
General maintenance on the blue page went from 220,000 to 216,000, so which was 52,230.
For the, if that's the total, that would also include personnel costs as well.
Doesn't say
So you're
that.
talking parks under general parks maintenance?
The blue sheet.
Yes. 28,000 of that is personnel?
28.
Yep. And then 11.5, which is, or 12.5, which is the goats.
Okay, so
Under
that's
contractual.
35. What's the other stuff?
Okay, those of us that have it on a PDF don't have blue, so what are we looking at?
Under the parks budget, there's a $28,000 increase in personnel costs in parks under general maintenance, and there's a $12,000 increase for contractual services. So that's 40,000, and that's the amount that the total budget's up under parks maintenance.
Yeah.
So 28 of it is personnel, 12 is contractual,
Which is the goats.
which is the goats.
Okay. There is a big increase in police administration under the computer programming and the telephone. I get the telephone, but
Right, that's in their budget. The 6,000 of the computer is due to a change in the programming out at the county, and the 4,000 the phones. When we switched over from AT&T to Comcast, how it was billed changed.
Right.
It used to be billed by how many lines each building had. So we had 3 lines here at City Hall. Now it's billed on the number of actual extensions. So the police department allocation for that went way up because they have a lot. They only had 3 lines coming in, but now they have all those extensions for it. So that's where, so the money was shifted from a different department over to police. So for example, the clerk treasurer will be going down in that area.
so in patrol vehicle leases, is it necessary to do another lease?
They'll have to ask.
We use the car that we have.
Chief Jensen will have to address that.
We can do away with one lease and just keep driving the old investigator car to it.
Well, for a little longer.
But we're talking, what, 5,000, 600?
What page are you on? 2 of 5?
3 of 5 in the police patrol budget.
They're coming up next year.
It jumps from 17,000 to 29,000. So 12 grand.
I'm just trying to find that page. Yeah, he has an increase of $10,000 in the leased vehicles.
That was to cover the increase in.
I budgeted for 3 leases. One was a new lease, and the other for 2 replacement leases. One was to also capture the increases that came with the lease agreements that we have. We've been right about that budget period, but we were just underneath it, or just over it. We had to take money from our vehicle reequipment account to pay off for it because it wasn't covering it all the way. So that $10,000 was to cover that extra vehicle plus the increase. So I'd have to take a look and see if I can find my numbers on it, but I believe the one vehicle that we were looking at, the Kia, was $406.15 a month. What does that equal out to over 12?
4 something.
Not 19, not 1 million. Was 416 times 12?
406.15 times 12.
Just under 5,000.
Right, and then you got the maintenance agreement, some of the little expenditures that come in, like another $100 on top of that. So it's right around about $5,000. The other 2 leases are up in March that we have to replace.
But you could make it another year.
Driving the Trailblazer, correct? We could.
So, I mean, we could take the lease out. There's another 10.
So that's 5,000.
5?
Right, because the other 5 is for vehicles that we already have.
Correct.
Yes.
So you, right.
So is there consensus on the squad vehicle or the lease?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
That is, for the most part, the bigger items I've had on my list. Next to personnel.
Where's that put us at?
That 5.295, so, or 296, right, so down 3 cents essentially.
So there's 5.
0.3%.
That's a total of 29,000 taken out.
Correct.
Did we already suspend the rules? Yeah,
Yes.
because we're talking about this. Okay.
Yeah. Devin, real quick, if we fill these positions, we have to fill them with 2 new officers that we're working on an eligibility list for right now. So they're not going to get filled until sometime, maybe February, end of February sometime. So there's going to be savings,
2 months worth.
2 months worth of savings there.
So you're talking about $15,000? What I did was I took the one off the new patrol position.
Right, because
For
even
2
if we
months.
got the sergeant, we weren't going to fill the sergeant's position until we got the patrol officers in place, because it wouldn't make any sense to take anybody off the street to do that.
So it'd be about a $15,000. If that person wasn't, if the new officer position wasn't filled till March 1st, you'd be looking at about $15,000.
Yeah.
So where are we at now?
There's
You want it
another
sold?
penny.
Yes, is that, okay.
So, everybody in agreement on the leases?
Yep.
Everybody in agreement on,
Goats.
Goats, the website, we're delaying a year, and then, as Marty indicated, there'd be about a 2-month delay in the.
Around
okay.
salary, yeah.
So that's 44,000 total, is that right?
Correct. So let's see where we're at.
You doing math in your head over there?
Piece of paper.
528.6. Well, that went down a penny, which makes sense because it's 16 grand for each penny.
I'm good with that.
Not sure there's much else.
Yeah.
I'm willing to cut, I guess.
Like I said, I guess personally, I'm going to spend more time starting at the beginning of the year, continuing to and I feel like I've been mindful, but more mindful, I guess, is sort of going into the next cycle.
Marty, can I ask a question? If you would wait to hold off on the sergeant then as well until you got a new officer on?
I was just talking with the
Okay.
lieutenant. We don't want to fill that sergeant's position because then we're going to be taking from the patrol ranks to fill it, and then again we'll have supervision out there, but we won't have a patrol officer. So we're going to want to make sure that we have those officers in position when we make that switch. So.
Okay. Because that would theoretically save you 2 months on that position as well, correct? If we said March 1st?
Yeah, basically, yeah,
Right.
correct. We would know who the person was, but they wouldn't start that position until we were, I'd taken care of everything. So, does that add more? That takes more of that off of there.
Right. He's saying neither one of those positions will be filled until
you only
March.
take one off?
I only took the patrol officer
Oh, I
out
didn't take
because I didn't know for sure. I didn't want to make that assumption. So that's what I'm doing right now. So that is 19,000, approximately more that would come off.
So we're down to 1.57, 5.27.
Hold on a second here. Let me.
Yeah.
So now that would be 56.5. Am I correct? No,
I was seeing 63. Were we adding 19?
Yep, you're right.
63.
11.75.
Divided by 16.
He's doing long division. Get a computer out.
Well, I didn't know we'd be doing this. So 63,000 is what I have.
I'm just using my phone.
That's what I got.
We're at 5.27?
Yep, hold on one second, I'll tell you here. So, 8501472 divided by
3.9,
1611700.
so
5275, give or take.
it's better.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing what we can do when we roll up our sleeves a little bit, put our heads to it. All right, is there a motion?
I will move to.
Randy actually
I
made a
have
motion
Oh.
initially.
But I will
Sorry.
accept the changes to.
So just to verify we're on the same page here, we're taking 11,500 out for the website, delay that 1 year, upgrade.
75
What? 11,500.
for the website.
For the website.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that much. I thought it was 7,500.
12,500 for the goats, 5,000 to lease vehicle, delaying that for a year, and then the 34,000 are the two positions not being started till March because of the timing. So that's a total of 63,000.
And the motion incorporates the move of the squad to the.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what you have. So where it says there's a levy of tax at the bottom, the final number will be 8521472, and I'll get you all a clean copy of this once we get it fixed. So.
What does that mean for total increase, levy increase for the,
Percentage-wise,
yeah?
well, 25 cents divided by 5.03. Just under 5%, 4.9%.
Okay.
So what is it? 528 or 5.7.5,
Right about 5.28. 277.
which is a 4.9% increase.
Yep.
Oh, it's a 5% increase.
We originally you were at 6.69.
What's better? I'm going to second that motion.
All right, got a motion and a second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Consent agenda.
To approve the regular meeting minutes of November 6, 2017. To approve claims in the amount of $449,213.01. Contingent on payment of any outstanding debt owed to the city and successful completion of the background check. To approve the issuance of 3 regular operator licenses for the period of November 21st, 2017 to June 30th, 2019 to Charles Jansen, Kayla Kwok, and Alexander Newman. To approve the secondhand dealer Mall flea market license for Abigail Page Antique Mall, contingent on standard background check and payment of any outstanding debt owed to the city. To place on file the Public Utility Commission meeting minutes of October 10th, 2017 and November 14th, 2017. To place on file the Public Utility Quarterly Report, and to authorize the mayor and city administrator to authorize any necessary year-end payments that may arise for 2017 budget items that cannot be delayed until January 8th, 2018.
Move for approval.
Second?
Got a motion and a second for approval. Roll call?
Morissette?
Yes.
Alms?
Yes.
McCormick?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Haggett?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Motion's approved. Unfinished business. Discussion, possible action on ordinance 17-17, amending Hudson City Code Chapter 23, establishing the types of resolutions that may be considered by the council.
Point of clarification,
Yes.
was the last time it was on the agenda when we postponed it a first reading?
We didn't officially do a first reading, so no, I would say not.
I'll move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to suspend. Roll call?
Morissette?
Yes.
Alms?
Yes.
McCormick?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Haggett?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Motion's approved. Rules are suspended.
Move to adopt ordinance number 17-17.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion?
Question. Previous discussions, there are ways to introduce things onto the agenda, and that there was some mechanism that you could do that with a petition, with signatures. Is that true, or was I dreaming that? Or?
No, you weren't dreaming that. That's by statute.
Okay.
That citizens can initiate legislation, essentially, and it's not just any type of legislation. There's a fair amount of case law on it, but if they get a petition that meets the requirements of the statute, then the council has to put it up for a referendum on the proposed legislation. It doesn't include all types of legislation, and again, I don't have the information for you on that, but it is by statute, it's not by council rule. It wouldn't be resolutions, it would be ordinances.
Okay, I see.
My only concern with this, I understand the purpose of it, and I think I'm in agreement to define a process, but I'm concerned about having to have a unanimous vote of the council. That's overly strict in my mind. I think a simple majority would be sufficient. Otherwise, with unanimous, it'd be extremely easy to block anything, or you might as well go ahead and approve it if you've got 6 people saying, yeah, we want this on the agenda. It's just like...
I think that's the point. Isn't there...
the purpose of it is to avoid getting into significant discussions about what can go on the agenda or not. You're trying to restrict these types of resolutions that aren't required for either exercising city council authority or conducting city business. I think the idea, and again, this is a policy decision for the council to make, but it's purposely to be so that there's consistency in what types of resolutions are allowed on the agenda and what aren't. If everyone's behind it, then it can go on the agenda for discussion. I did find in the city of River Falls that they require a unanimous vote for suspending rules, which this is somewhat like. It's allowing something that's not within the parameters of the resolutions. But again, council has authority. It's just to prevent the situation that has arisen with several different types of resolutions coming forward and having to have a discussion every time a resolution like that comes up. It's a policy decision for the... Right. So that's the explanation, and I guess you certainly can have differences of opinion and have a discussion on it and decide how you'd like to proceed on that. But this wasn't a proposed or recommended by me. It's just I've seen it in River Falls, and it was designed to kind of protect the rule from being changed or applied somewhat inconsistently.
We have other ordinances or things that you need a 2/3 majority or.
Yeah, there's annexation ordinances, and actually to repeal or change these rules of procedure, it requires a 2/3, which is 4 council votes. So yeah.
I think 2/3 majority would be, instead of a simple majority, so everybody has to be represented.
Well, it takes the mayor out of the equation too. You wouldn't actually ever get a vote on this one.
No, and that's just it. There is no simple majority. It's 2/3 or nothing.
Majority, all right.
You know.
Well, if it's 2/3 majority of the entire council, not those present at a meeting.
Well, I guess at one time it would come into play as if there's a 3-3 tie, and then if the mayor votes, you don't have a 2/3 majority, because then it's 5 votes would be required. Now, you could do 5 votes, which would be, that's really up to you folks to discuss.
I've given the language some thought as well, and I thought, so 4 votes. If you want to take it down to 4 votes, what's the point? There's no point in even considering this, because that's what it takes to pass these resolutions at any given time anyway. So what's the point? Why are we doing this? So unanimous is if it's too onerous, take it to 5. But if you're not going to do 5 or 6, there's no point even having the discussion. Anybody else?
Well, I can't support a unanimous decision because it's just saying, just going to do it. If 6 of us are going to vote to bring it up as a referendum, to allow it on the up for discussion, not much is going to change. If it's 4, possibly 5, then it'd say, yeah, I want to hear about this, but I may or may not.
That's a good one.
It may not pass.
So if it was 5, would you support it?
I'd support 5.
Yeah, I think I could support that.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah, that's
Is your motion or anything you want to?
I'll change it to 5.
All right, who seconded it? Are you okay with 5?
Did I second it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I'm
did.
okay with 5. Yes.
Okay. All right, so amend the motion to 5. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on approval of letter of engagement with 5 Bugles for site plan and drawings for fire station as recommended by Public Safety Committee.
This came out of safety. It's a little preview of what we're suggesting that needs to be done before we go to RFP. So I guess Chief St. Martin, if you want to introduce.
Honorable Mayor, common council members, again, it's a recommendation to engage with 5 Bugles. They did the first part of the study, and Mr. Clark is here from 5 Bugles. He'll explain what this next process would be. A little bit of a background. I think the council directed the Public Safety Committee to look into this. The Public Safety Committee asked myself and Chief Listick to look at some options. What we came up with seemed to be the best possible solution for us is build the fire station and then keep the existing west building. After we talked about that, I met with Mike Johnson, our Economic Development Director, to make sure that it would fit basically with a comp plan and everything else within the city. He seemed to come to agreement on it, that was a good site. So there's really Mr. Clark will talk about the next couple steps. This would be the more economical one, I think the one that I advised to take, and that's getting some drawings of a station and also a site plan to make sure everything would work on that existing site with removing just the one building. So I'll let Mr. Clark go ahead and speak on this.
Thanks, Chief. Thanks, Mayor.
Can I ask a question, Chief, before we start this? I believe the original charge was to look at Ward Avenue. Would it support both the fire and EMS?
Yes,
and so now
that
just looking at the fire.
Well, the recommendation also would, if the council so decided, and the EMS would be to keep that west building up that they were originally to go in for them. If that's the direction they went, that would stay on site, would not be removed. And then the building would be built next to that. And that's another reason why, like I said, Mr. Johnson and I looked at it, kind of put a pen to paper. This would verify everything that all could stay as placed. The new building could go on that site. The current building could stay. And then also we'd get some renderings of what the building would look like. And also they would take their needs assessment that they did last year and basically take that, put that into a new building and fit it on there, and then the next phase would be come back with that, and then the council would decide what the next step would be. The nice part about doing it this way is if we get to that point, I think we're going to have a really good idea what that new building would cost before we would go to decide if we decide to go to RFP and build. But and also, what it would look like, how it would fit on there, and how it would fit within the community too. So I think to me it's kind of the natural next step. And the way we would fund it would be come out of our contingency fund. I believe I talked to Brenda about it. Should be under budget this year, enough to cover it. But what I'd like to do is take it out of the contingency so we guarantee it in case something big happens where we go over budget. After the year end, if we're under budget, replenish that $7,500 back into our contingency fund. So
that's the fire department's contingency fund.
It's the fire department's contingency fund, and also the recommendation. It was recommended by the Joint Fire Advisory Board too. So all the partners are on board taking this out of our current budget in the contingency fund. So they did approve it and recommend it also, along with the public safety.
With the future idea, Jim, of having the EMS in mind in future development of that building. So we're not shutting the door on EMS, but we're focused on just fitting a building up there and giving us an idea of where we are with costs, but he'll explain that.
Yeah, and Brandon was satisfied with using the current Ward Avenue building if it were remodeled.
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you. There's some information that was in your packet, and I passed around copies of that. So if you have your packet and you can pass it along when I passed out, that would be good because I only had so many copies. I'm sorry I did not bring enough. The intent of that information, though, was merely to remind you where we've been on this subject. As the chief said, 5 Bugles was hired last year to look at what was going on over at the station with a few limited scope things that we did over there. So we looked to see if the building was working for him, and the answer was not. It's a little too small. In fact, it's very much too small, and it's got some maintenance challenges that are going to need to be fixed if it stays there. We looked at what would happen if you added space and tried to make room for it there, and none of those answers were good. We were using up a lot of parking in the downtown that the city needs in the downtown. We looked at a station location. We said, is that station in the right place? The answer is it's not in a bad place, but there are better places. If we can move it further east of where it is currently sitting, that would be good. So the city is kind of acting on that a little bit and has identified the Ward site as a potential place to put it. You all just talked about some things here related to the Ward site. You want to keep the buildings that are there. There's a potential for the EMS to go there. The fire has a big building, and they have some things that they need to do around it in order for it to work. For instance, drive-through bays are really the best way of setting that up, and so that means there's a lot of driving of trucks around on the site. So we want to make sure that all of that fits on that site and not just assume before we move forward. The chief started asking me questions about what are the next steps, what's the best way to move forward, looking for my recommendation about it. That's what the bottom half of that cover sheet that I passed out is about, which is that you really have two options at this point. The first option, which is what the chief is recommending, is that we do a quick study. We just look at the site. We know how much space he needs. We've talked with the EMS. We know approximately what they're thinking about doing there. So we have the ability now to do a specific plan for a Hudson fire station on that site and make sure everything fits. And when we do that, it'll help us tighten up our numbers a little bit so we can come back to you with a good solid site plan that shows how it all works, floor plans that are acceptable for the fire department, showing how it works, and then some imagery about what it could potentially look like in your community. That's the smallest step we could take. If you're sure that you're going to do this project and you're sure you want to do it on the ward site, you could take a bigger step and put out an RFP for architectural services to just move forward that project. Much bigger step, much bigger costs go with it. Thus our recommendation to take the little step and do the study. Attached to the rest of that handout, and like I said, it was in your board packet, there's a couple of illustrations from a study we just finished, just kind of showing you what you would be getting for your money. A nice rendered site plan showing all of the major parts of the building, the parking, the water, stormwater management, all that kind of stuff. You'd get a floor plan that's showing the organization of the buildings, and you would get some nice computer renderings of what it would potentially look like. To be clear, those are just examples of something we're currently working on for somebody else and aren't really what we would specifically come up with for you, but a similar product.
And the cost number did come up respectively, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but we had a conversation about the cost would be between $5.5 to $6 million, not the $10 million, conservatively. I don't remember the conversation we had about it, but it was cheaper than what we anticipated.
A lot.
Yeah.
At one point, we were talking like 13 million, weren't we, or something?
Well, like this gentleman said, he said brick and tin is kind of what you had suggested at public safety. Is a lot cheaper than,
Well, yes. There are a lot of choices here in how they look. In fact, that example I chose to put in here is one that we're currently working on where they have some concerns about costs in their community. They're not the kind of community that wants to see a big brick and stone product sitting in their community that says here's the fire station. They're more interested in a working facility that says it's a working fire station. So a lot of brick and more metal, brick and metal versus brick and stone. So yes, we could be bringing the cost down a little bit, and actually this step lets us do that. The last step we had a big range because we hadn't laid out any floor plans. We hadn't looked at a specific site. We were using a lot of generalities about what the cost would be. And we wanted to make sure that whatever recommendations we give to you folks don't, lead to an over budget bidding situation later on in the process here. So.
Awesome.
I just want to speak on the cost real quick. I'm thinking probably be a little more than that, roughly in that range. But but here's the reason why I'm recommending this. We can get down pretty hard cost into today's dollars what it would cost, because we'll have this drawing, we'll have the square footage, and we'll have, we've talked about this. I've talked with Councilmember Morissette. We're looking at doing this. We want a nice fire station that's going to fit within this community and that spot, but also it's going to be very utilitarian. We're going to try and keep it square. We're going to kind of and look at some possible tip-up construction. We're going to get a nice building, but where you could easily go to that 9, 10, 12 million if you decide to add all the extra stuff. We're not looking at that range. We're looking at, and that's what this point will get us to, is that when we can get some numbers out there from people at this, they'll actually be bidding on that type of a project, and those numbers then we can come back to the council and they can make the decision on those numbers, which should be pretty realistic when we get to this next step.
So I guess we'll move to approve the request out of his contingency fund.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion?
Just a couple of questions, Scott. You're satisfied that the egress, you're in and out, it's going to be suitable for a fire station? It's going to be workable for you?
Yeah, we've had this discussion, and it's definitely a workable site. I don't think in a town that's fully developed you're going to find the perfect site. Of what's available right now, this is definitely, and that's kind of getting back to the GIS study. And even now from our original aerials we had, since then now the street's been put in, Hillcrest has been put in, Ward's been put in, and then eventually Ward is going to go all the way up to Carmichael. So actually it'll increase, and it will get better. But yeah, we can get onto the freeway there. And I know Mike Johnson always liked to mention the Carmichael interchange. When that's finished, that's going to help us out too, eventually getting back onto the freeway. So, and if you look at the GIS, the only drawback to this site at this point is it might take our responders a little more time to get there on average. But if you look at the response from there, it's one of the best spots to go out of, because if you look at it, it's in the middle of the city and it goes in every which direction. So to answer your question, yeah, it'll work. Is there an absolute perfect spot? No, but as far as other than eminent domain, this probably is the best spot we have available for sure. And the fact that the new streets and stuff will definitely help. And then getting in and out of there, we've done the preliminaries. We wouldn't be here if we didn't think it was going to work. But now we want to make sure it's going to work by having the architects that do the site plan. So
you answered the other two questions that I had already without even knowing it. Thanks.
Anybody else?
One other, and I don't want to go, but we also talked, the big thing too is it fits into that spot within the city. It's, we're not putting it somewhere where it's going to be kind of an albatross and not fit. Mr. Johnson's pretty comfortable with that spot for a fire station within our city too, which to me makes a difference too. It's got to work for everybody, so.
Thanks.
Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you very much.
Discussion possible action on ordinance 18-17, amendment to chapter 106 of the municipal code regarding uniform building code adoption and enforcement. David.
Yeah, back in October, I introduced very few minor changes to our municipal code, chapter 106. Tonight, you'll find an ordinance with the exact same changes, looking for adoption.
Move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion second to suspend. Roll call.
Morissette.
Yes.
Alms.
Yes.
McCormick.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Hoggett.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Rules are suspended.
Move to adopt, resolution
Ordinance
18-17.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Discussion and possible action to accept the bid for the 2018 tractor backhoe purchase.
Good evening again. As discussed in the Finance Committee, I'd like to present discussion and action on to accept the bids for the purchase of a 2018 tractor backhoe. The city sent out advertisements in the paper for 2 weeks per our procurement policy. The specification and bids were sent out to several vendors and also available on the city website. Bid openings were held on Monday, November 13th, 2017. We received 4 bids. 1 was not in compliance. The 3 bids that were in compliance were Miller Bradford Fabric and Nortrax. I'd like to just note that on the bid for the Nortrax base bid, it should read $119,977. Staff recommendation is to accept the bid from Miller Bradford for $83,500 with the funding source from the 2017 capital funds.
Move to approve.
Got a motion second to approve.
Seconded.
Weber. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Discussion and possible action on a pre-development agreement for redevelopment proposal analysis and review of planning and financial assistance in the city of Hudson, Wisconsin for property generally located at 721 First Street and 811 First Street.
Thank you. So these are, a pre-development agreement is something that I'll be bringing forward a lot more of, especially for projects downtown. Effectively what it is if a developer is desirous of doing a redevelopment project within the Riverway Ordinance or the NR 118 St. Croix River Scenic Overlay District, there's a lot of, it's a much more complicated and drawn out process. So to do that, the city would contract with engineering and planning firm, and then the developer pays for that through a deposit up front. So we get quotes. In this specific case, we would be working with MSA because there's also some more involved planning processes. There's a proposed rezoning for it in addition to the Riverway review. So every time that you rezone, plan for a development, or subdivide, you have to provide the DNR with notice. So this is just having the developer pay our consultant to do those reviews on our behalf. So it's just the next step in the process. And then the other piece of it is, as we're looking at potentially studying a TIF district downtown, the establishment of a redevelopment TIF downtown, determining whether or not this project, there's feasibility for this project in that TIF district, if it were to happen.
Mike, what kind of a deposit, what size are you talking about?
This project is $6,000. $1,000 for the feasibility through others, and then the $5,000 for MSA to do their review.
So going forward, this is going to be kind of your thing then?
Yep.
Okay. Move we approve.
I'll second.
Motion is second to approve. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on a pre-development agreement for redevelopment proposal analysis and review of planning and financial, pre-development agreement for development proposal analysis and review of planning and financial assistance in the city of Hudson, Wisconsin for property generally located at 517 2nd Street.
Same as the last item. This one's a little less involved as it's already zoned for what they want to do. This is a redevelopment or potential redevelopment of the old Dibbo's Hotel, a residential development on the back side of that building. So this would be work that we would do with SEH under our master agreement with them, and this is for $4,000.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on final development plans for the Xcel Energy Evidence Storage Facility at 2001 Old Highway 35 South.
This item is in addition to an amendment to their final master development plans for the Hudson Service Center. It's a proposed approximately 2,000 square foot cold storage building where Xcel would store, somebody were to run into a light pole, and that evidence would have to be stored somewhere. So until the insurance adjusters got there to take a look at it, or an attorney. So it'd be in the northeast corner of their property, meets all the setback requirements, but I did want to go through this process as it is an addition or amendment to the original master plan.
A move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second for approval.
So is this a building or is it a storage lot or what are we?
It's a building.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
How far set back is it?
Ross is, I think, 40 feet. 44 feet on the east side, 41.2 on the north side.
Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Discussion and possible action on resolution number 19-17, authorizing the issue and sale of up to $1,866,120 for water revenue bonds.
Good evening.
Hey, Brenda.
In June, you authorized staff to do the application for these, what we call the Safe Water Drinking Loan Program through the state. And the reason that we would like to do this instead of issuing bonds for this project is the lower interest rate. In the memo, I have 1.87, but it's actually the loan through the state is 1.76. I called Ellers today, and for similar 20-year bonds would be 2.95%. So the interest savings over the 20 years is approximately $250,000. Plus cost of issuance costs, we would save about $25,000. And so in front of you is the resolution authorizing the sale, and they are called water revenue bonds, but they are through the state DNR program, the Safe Water Drinking Loan Program.
And what are we using this for? Is it to well 10 complete, just to complete well 10? To complete well 10. And we did use some available cash in the utility fund. So we didn't fund 100% of the project. We used about $1 million in cash, and so now we're bonding for the rest. And it would be then the intent that future impact fees would pay for the repayment of these bonds.
I'll move to suspend the rules.
Second. Motion and second to suspend. Roll call.
Morset?
Yes.
Alms?
Yes.
McCormick?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Haggett?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Motion's approved. Rules are suspended.
Move to adopt resolution 19-17.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thanks,
you.
Brenda. All right. All I've got is we have an announcement that we have 2-hour free parking begins Friday and it continues. This is downtown. I guess that's the only place we charge for parking. Continues until after New Year's Day, and that's for allowing for parking and other activities in downtown. Hope to see you all down there sometime through the season here, the candlelight stroll or the light up the night. And then also I just want to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. Hope you have an enjoyable one and keep it safe. And look forward to seeing everybody back here soon. Anybody else?
How are we doing with the drone ordinance?
Should be on public safety.
I think it was.
I've given it to
It
the
was
chief.
Didn't get a chance to get it to council, so it'll be on the fourth council meeting.
All right.
It's done.
Yeah.
I'd like that for the next agenda, take a look at our sign ordinance, in particular realtor signs, open house signs. And I don't know if that goes up to Mike.
You want, yeah, actually Mike and I have talked a little bit about the sign ordinance, and I don't want to speak for you. He's coming to the mic, obviously. He's got something to say.
I don't. I
Right?
I just want to revisit the sign ordinances, in particular the open house realtor signs.
Okay, absolutely.
And take a look at maybe some exceptions.
We can bring that to Plan Commission on the 5th. I think.
I'm pleased to report that Urban Forestry Board has received yet another grant from Wisconsin DNR, thanks to Tom and Deb and Ken put the pen to paper this year, and I don't remember all the details, but this is the second year in a row we've gotten another grant for urban forestry, so we're happy about that.
Excellent. Scott.
Sorry, I just wanted to mention real quick, I think I mentioned to a few of the council members, last June we had a full audit from the ISO that came and did it of the full fire department, and we just received our ratings, and just before I'd like to thank Jim Fryer from the water department and Karen and Mike Pruka. There was put a lot of effort into this. We were able to improve our ratings from a 4 to a 3 in the city and from a 6 to a 5 out in the township. So hopefully it'll reflect a little bit maybe on some insurance premiums. So again, thanks for everyone. Just kind of let you know that they hopefully will go down. So
Congratulations on that, Scott.
Thank you, and thanks for everybody's support in the fire department. So
I
thanks.
apologize for not having brought that up myself.
Oh,
Thank
no.
you for bringing
Thank
that
you.
up. Anybody else?
Amazing.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion second to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Glad it's over. Is that what I?
Stand adjourned.